Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
This is the Edge of Liberty podcast.
Get ready for truth bombs, belly laughs, the kind of accent that turns car into a two-syllable adventure. Here's your host, Sean.
Ladies and gentlemen, why isn't it always bourbon? I should ask the chat. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to the Edge of Liberty right here on the SHI Media Network. The is always optional. It's the 18th of February. Holy smokes, it's the 18th of February. Moving right along from here in rain-soaked California. As BZ would say, always spell it with a K. And getting right down into it, gonna start over in the Middle East and Iran. Put a little poll up in the chat room if you wouldn't mind taking that, entertaining us. I'd greatly appreciate it. And the question was, do you think do you think the U.S. will attack Iran before this weekend? I'm going with yes. The amount of equipment, strike aircraft, etc., that has been moved over the last 2 weeks, but the strike aircraft being moved this past week is the one that really stuck out to me. Something like 30-something F-22s and F-35 that went in line being supported by 5 or 6 air refueling tankers to get over there. There's talks in Geneva between America and Iran. Other countries are involved too. They're only talking about who's leading the talks, though. Talks in Geneva has reportedly made headway as of yesterday, where it was the second round. Over there is Trump Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner meeting with Iran Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. Reports from the meeting indicate general agreement on a set of guiding principles to move towards a draft agreement. So it's the promise before the promise before the promise. And look, if you're Iran right now, you want to make a deal if you're going to stay in power, or you think you're going to stay in power, you want to make a deal. I know I see so much on social media about, oh, Iran can do this and Iran can do that and blah, blah, blah. No, they can't. The propagandists working for Iran and other countries in the Middle East who are supporting them will put up all sorts of stuff. But, I mean, geez, Louise. No. Key quote from Iran, who Araghchi should not be saying this, is the ball is in America's court. We're ready to discuss, and they provided that they are ready to talk about sanctions. Yeah, I have a feeling, and I don't know exactly what is being said in these meetings. You don't know either. We can all guess. I have a feeling the U.S. envoys are essentially saying, look, the Ayatollah is going to go. If the Ayatollah doesn't go, and if you guys don't stop the bullshit, then we're just going to go ahead and remove you. Now, that's just my theory on what's being said because we have all the leverage. As I said a few minutes ago, we've been moving shit over that way for 3 weeks now. You have 2 aircraft carriers in the region well, the Silkworm could take out the aircraft carrier. Yeah, they have the Sea Whiz. Okay. They have technology we don't even know about. Obviously, look at what happened in Venezuela with the sound ray technology, right? Do you really, if you're Iran right now, and again, we can get into the optics about this, the politics about it, whatever. We've talked about it so many times in the past. I'm just talking about, should the strike word be given and America strikes? If you're Iran, do you honestly think that you stand a chance? And the answer is no. You know the reality of it. Now, you're going to bolster that you can. You're going to put all this other stuff on TV. You're going to release the video of, what was it, drones taking off from their little drone aircraft carrier. And you're going to make AI videos, yada, 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 whatever. You're not going to stop, specifically because you just saw what America did to the Venezuelan air defenses, right? You just saw that whole operation. And now you have 2 aircraft carriers, a shitload more air units, and your air defenses were otherwise neutered by Israel the last time we sent a couple B-2s over. So there's no chance. And could they get off a lucky shot or two? Absolutely. Anytime you're in an incident like that, anybody could get off a lucky shot or two, 100%. Is there a real threat? No. I mean, like it or not, we're really good at going to other places and bombing the shit out of it when they're fortified. Never mind when they're not fortified. Now, again, I don't know what the after plan is if we remove the Ayatollahs. I suspect that Israel and a couple other countries will step in and take care of stuff on the ground. That's just my suspicion. Experts, people much smarter than I, have suggested that. And again, you have to ask yourself, it's almost like Venezuela and how it affected China and Russia and our hemisphere, all three. You have to look at Iran and say, does this affect us and our allies? Will this benefit the United States in the future? And is that risk and that reward worth it? And if your answer is yes, and the next step is relatively easy, you tell the people that actually know how to run a military, the generals and the admirals, go get them, boys. Let me know how you make out. I'll be right here if you need anything, but you guys know what the hell you're doing more than anybody else does. So have at it. And then, yeah, it would begin. So my guess is by this weekend, if they don't reach a deal, which, like I said, I have a feeling the ability to reach that deal is going to be very, very limited. Let's look at the force buildup. I talked about it a little bit, and I get some notes on it. Carrier Strike Group 1, the USS Abraham Lincoln's been there since January. Carrier Strike 2, number 2, the USS Gerald Ford, the largest warship ever built, has been making their way over there. I'm guessing they're pretty close now. I know they left, 3-4 days ago? Last week sometime. Numerous Aegis destroyers, including the USS Frank Peterson, the USS Spruance, are over there as well. As I mentioned, the F-35 and F-22s have been ferried into the region over the last 48 hours. F-15Es and F-16s are already on sorties out over the Gulf and over allied countries. So it's not a patrol. It's not a warning. The warning is when we first moved into the region. That's when we said, hey, you got to start thinking different. This is not a warning as much as this is whatever is between a warning and kicking your asses. That's where this is right now. And look, again, the protests are still going on. And to me, this is the biggest portion of it, honestly. The protests are still going on. Anywhere from 7,000 to 20,000 people have been murdered. Some places say as high as 36,000 people since the end of December. It's so hard to get information, as you know, out of Iran. The streets are under martial law, but the citizens, they're still chanting death to the dictator there. Neither Gaza nor Lebanon. My life is for Iran is some of the people that they're or some of the sayings that have been heard. So the people there are still fired up. The people there are still wanting a change, and this is not the first time. This isn't a passing moment for them. This has been going on for a long time. When this first started, I did have to wonder, is it going to be like the other protests where once Iran started being total monsters towards their people, were the people going to back off? And the answer is no. They're still going over there. The Iranian people are still protesting and fighting back. So anything is possible. I had transitioned a little bit here. I went international first just because it was fun. Gavin Newsom is not having his best week. And this is going to take me through the break. So I'll hit the break at 20 past the hour and then I'll come back and finish this. After going to Munich, where he had no reason to go other than the fact that he was meeting with Alex Soros and kissing his ass. There's no reason for a governor to be going. I don't even think that the Congress people should be going, but at least they're on a federal level, yada, yada, yada. And I talked Monday night how they had all their little jerk-off circles and they're telling each other how great they were. But Newsom went over there and a lot of people said, Gavin, should you be, after the pushback that you got in Davos, and there was a lot of pushback here in the state, a lot of people, even his supporters, were not thrilled about it. Should you be going to Munich? And of course, Gavin said, yeah, I stopped being governor a while ago, and that's just for fun now. I'm actually running for president full-time now, and this is all I do. I don't know if that was his direct quote, but I'm trying to think about what's the best way to set this up. So Ted Cruz goes on a talk show Ted Cruz has his own talk show, and he's on talking about it. And the reference that Newsom made while he was in Munich about the troops militarizing my city and all that shit that we've disproven on SHR Media 100 times. There's been deployments before, even in LA after riots. Like, this is not a weird thing. So Ted Cruz was commenting on it, and I'm going to play what he said first on his podcast.
Let's be very clear, Senator. That is Gavin Newsom comparing American law enforcement to Nazis.
Yep.
In Munich.
Which, by the way, it is what Obama was doing, too. By the way, just like AOC and Whitmer, Newsom is apparently thoroughly historically illiterate. He said we've never seen National Guards federalized in the states. I guess his history book does not discuss the civil rights movement. He's never heard of a president named Dwight D. Eisenhower. He's never heard of sending the National Guard into southern states.
And he goes on and proves his point, and he's right. Just as I said earlier, what Newsom said was fundamentally stupid and does not attach to history. But Gavin Newsom, it's so funny. When you look at the Gavin Newsom press office and he talks about how, the two little twerps that run that, I can't even remember their names, Brendan and the other one. They always try to point out, oh, this person's soft, this person's soft, this person's soft. Newsom very quickly took to X and he said this. Ted Cruz calling a dyslexic person illiterate is a new low even for him. Now stop. First and foremost, he didn't say you're illiterate. He said you're historically illiterate, i.e. you don't know what history is. Okay? And he proved it from all the times that he said that they have been, National Guard has been activated. Neither here nor there. A couple things I want to point out. First and foremost, does anyone on the fucking planet know that Gavin Newsom is dyslexic? And I'm not even saying he's not. And maybe if you're like a tight super Newsom supporter or you're in his circle, you know that. But the average person doesn't know that. But man, the thin skin and or attempt to garner sympathy from people. I'm dyslexic and he's making fun of me. And it wasn't even what he fucking said. And this is what you get out of Gavin Newsom. And I've said this a bunch of times. Gavin Newsom has no real identity of his own. He is whatever he thinks people want to vote for in the minute. That's who Gavin Newsom is. He is the worst of the politicians. I've said this before. You can dislike Trump all you want, but at least Trump's the same person for the most part. He doesn't just change whenever the wind blows. Trump is Trump all the time. Gavin Newsom can go from being a super hard left progressive Democrat to acting like he's a centrist, despite his entire history showing otherwise. Then one minute he talks tough every chance he gets and throws out big words and tough words, and he's out there calling out Trump and blah, blah, blah. He's coming just shy of Joe Biden, saying, I'd take him up behind the barn. And then when he thinks he's insulted, he goes and wets his panties on X. And the best part is he wasn't even insulted for being dyslexic. Like, there's so many things wrong with that shows you just how fucking off Gavin Newsom is as a human being. And the ass kicking for Gavin didn't end there this week. This one I saw, and of course, Gavin also spoke out about Randy Fine. I'll talk about that after the break because that's an interesting story. But it wasn't just Ted Cruz proving what a moron Gavin Newsom actually is, but he's also getting it from his own party, which this statement here now, I don't care who you are, if you don't agree that Barack Obama is still running the Democrat Party, then you're not paying attention. Barack Obama has been running the Democratic Party. It is not Joe Biden's party. It wasn't Joe Biden's party when he was president. Joe Biden didn't even know he's in that party anymore. We know that. Obama has been running that party since he got into office, and it's still his party to run. Kamala, little history here. Most people know this who watch the show. Kamala rebranded her Kamala HQ to just headquarters. And that's the indicator that she's running again. And a whole bunch of other people have said that too. She hasn't been doing a lot of public stuff, but everyone's saying that despite so many people trying to talk her out of it, in her close circle, she's going to run again. So now that we're here, Obama's making it very obvious, in my opinion, having watched politics for a long time and been doing this for a long time, Obama just turned around and kicked Newsom right in his little huevos in a podcast.
The same would be true, let's say, here in Los Angeles around the homeless issue. I think morally, ethically speaking, it is an atrocity that in a country this wealthy, we have people just on the streets. And we should have we should insist on policies that recognize their full humanity, people who are houseless, and be able to provide them the help and resources that they need. But we should also recognize that the average person, doesn't want to have to navigate around a tent city in the middle of downtown. And that we're not going to be able to build a working majority and support for the resources that we need to help folks like that, whether it's drug treatment or temporary housing or what have you. We're not going to be able to generate support for it if we simply say, you know what, it's not their fault, and so they should be able to do whatever they want.
Couple things to point out here. First of all, that was from the Brian Tyler Cohen show. That was an absolute evisceration of Newsom's policies and history with homelessness in California. The things that he said there it's so funny how you had Hillary last week in Munich talking about how immigration on mass scales was bad, and that, she was bragging about how her husband and Obama deported more than Trump. That's debatable, but that's neither here nor there. So they're starting to change their messaging at the top about immigration. And now the homeless. Now, if you don't realize, I've said this before, California is the liberal petri dish where they allow their gross fungus policies to grow, and then they try to spread the nasty spores throughout the rest of the country. They trial a lot of things here. Dealing with homelessness here, the way that they had, pretty much allowing it, giving it a free pass, and almost encouraging it in some ways, was something that they were trying, and it has massively failed. They see, even among Democrats, the policy towards homelessness is garbage. Like he said, nobody wants them just to have to walk around tents on the streets, et cetera, et cetera. So two things here. Signaling a change on how Democrats are going to, in the future, start looking at homelessness, which is not what they have been doing. They got a free pass with the Grants Pass ruling on homelessness. You can look that up. I encourage you to. That kind of forced them to change course. Is Democrats only change course when they don't have a choice. They don't change course they want to. And the policies that they do occasionally float are absolutely garbage. And this is how they try it out. And then you have Obama here saying, oh, no, we're going to have a different approach to this. The party, as you see, that is unbelievably far left right now, at least in their outward policy, is going to start coming back to the center. They lost males the last election. They lost young males the last election. And they lost a lot of independents last election. And Obama and Hillary this week both signaled that they're going to try to act like they're moving back to center just so they can gain power to go even further left. I'm up against a break. Thank you to our friends over at KLRN Radio for simulcasting the show tonight. I'll be back right after this. Hey, if you like the shirt, 250 reasons. I know it's hard to see. 250 reasons to read source documents. You go to shrmedia.com and get the shirt. It's the 250th birthday shirt for the United States of America. They're super soft. They're made in America by 7 Armors, and they're friends of ours, and we greatly appreciate the partnership. Back right after this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Welcome to the SHR Media Shop. This is not just merch, it is a statement. SHR Media is built as a rebellion against the mainstream. We deliver truth without a filter or permission. When you wear our gear, you are standing for liberty and unapologetic free thought. Every piece is a badge of support for independent journalism. Wear it loud, wear it proud. Support the mission and join the rebellion at the SHR Media web store.
Are you looking for a way to boldly express your faith and love for your country? Then check out 7 Armors, the premier apparel company for patriotic men of God, where faith meets freedom in style. Our t-shirts are more than just clothing, they're statements. Bold, stylish, and meaningful. From timeless messages to modern designs, we've got something for every patriotic man of God. Wear your beliefs proudly with 7 Armors gear. Don't miss the chance to wear your faith and freedom on your sleeve. Visit 7armors.com today and join the movement. That's the number 7armors.com.
Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
Welcome to the Reaver of Common Sense, where we cut through the noise of news and politics with a sharp edge. Tune in every Monday and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a refreshing dose of reality. We fearlessly tackle the tough topics with no nonsense, just pure common sense. Visit shrmedia.com to discover where you can catch the Reaver in action. He is here to amplify your inner logic. He may not always be polite. He may not always be refined. But one thing is for sure, he always tells it like it is. The Reaver of Common Sense.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Edge of Liberty right here on the SHI Media Network. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Appreciate everybody in the chat room. And the chat room has been doing really, really well. Let's see. I see Bud Russell's in the chat. I see Eric's in the chat. Kem Allow is in the chat. Sean Stroy's in the chat. Eric M. BZ, of course, in the chat. I saw Reaver in there. Phantom's in there. 002 AMT. The mods are awesome and fantastic mods who we greatly appreciate in there. Captain Thrust, which is a real grown-up name. Jack Boozer's in the chat room. Thank you so much, Jack. And right now, 4450 and some others. And you can be in the chat too if you go to SHR Media's YouTube page. Oh, I also see Real Lady Jules in the chat. So thank you guys so much for being there. I have a couple of videos I want to play back to back. Well, maybe I'll do what I normally do and interrupt it. But this was from the White House today on Ash Wednesday. And I want you to look at this guy's face. If you can't see it, he has the look before he asks the question that he knows he's about to get slammed, but it's almost like somebody made him ask his question at headquarters. Check this out.
Where or when does the president believe he's been falsely called racist?
You're kidding, right?
The question was, where or when has the president believed that he's been called racist? And her answer, appropriately so, is, you're kidding, right? Now watch the rest of the video.
I'm Don Lemon. The President of the United States is racist.
He is a tried and true, dyed-in-the-wool racist.
I know what Mr. Trump is. He is a racist.
What Trump has always been was a rich, malevolent, really racist man.
We now have a President of the United States who is a racist.
Do you believe President Trump is a racist?
Yeah. No question.
Donald Trump, what's it say?
I think he's a racist.
He is a racist.
The president is a racist.
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 I am the least racist person you've ever met.
I'm going to give credit to the Daily Wire for that one.
Where or when does the president...
I wanted to use that to set up this next clip. This was during, I believe it was today, during a event at the White House that was for to celebrate Black History Month with the Black History Month reception. And listen to this young lady and what she had to say that counteracts everything that they had to say.
That's so nice. I like her. Please.
I like him too. One thing I like about him, he keeps it real just like Grandma. I appreciate that because I can trust him because he tells exactly how he feels and what he thinks. Thank God for this president. I am filled, my cup runneth over. Because he allowed his constituents, his people to come to my house to interview me, to talk about the murder of my grandson. It seemed like nobody cared. I'm an advocate for murder. I marched. I rallied. I pulled out other families in the District of Columbia that had murders and did not have answers. Ooh. We marched and we rallied, and nobody heard me, Democrats. Get mad at me. Until this Republican sent his constituents, his people out there to interview me in my home. Have you ever heard of a thing? Then they invited me twice before Congress to testify for the beautiful bill that's going to change crime in the district. If you kill somebody, okay, you take a life, you do life. Just that simple. If you do a harsh crime, you do harsh time. Just that simple. And then we need National Guard, and which we did years ago. He brought it on. I love him. I don't want to hear nothing you got to say about that racist stuff. And don't be looking at me on the news, hating on me because I'm standing up for somebody that deserves to be standing up for. Get off the man's back. Let him do his job. He's doing the right thing. Back up off of him. And Grandma said it.
If Grandma said it, you can't argue with it. She's awesome. I was kind of blown away with her energy because it's a lot of pressure being at the White House, right? And I don't care who's in the office, but when you're asked to speak at the White House, it's a lot of pressure. Yeah, she's spoken before Congress. Yeah, she's spoken a lot about the gun violence in DC. She's an experienced speaker, but even still, to exude that much energy and do it properly and do it in a way that her speech was unbelievably touching when she's talking about her son. And then how she ramped up and she had all of this just energy and gusto. And I don't know, like, look, I talk to people on this all the time. I've done some crowd work in the past. I'm comfortable talking in front of people. I don't know how comfortable I'd be doing it at the White House just because it's the White House. But I thought playing those two together was a great way to follow the story and the headline versus the reality. And I talk about it on this show all the time. The reality that's put on social media, the reality that's put out even in mainstream media, is not the reality of people, how people feel by and large. And the other thing that they do is they'll throw out things like, oh, he's racist and all this other stuff for people to retweet constantly. And this is my new thing. If you're watching the show and you're like, Sean, I've heard this before. Yes, you have. There's a reason this shirt says 250 reasons to read source documents. And this particular shirt, yes, it means the Constitution, but in general, it means do your fucking homework. Look beyond the headline. Go look at what the actual substance is and not the froth. Get rid of the head on the beer and actually drink the body of it. Speaking of beer, funny I should mention that. There's going to be a new show coming to SHR Media on Fridays and Saturdays. And if you go to shrmedia.com and you go to shows and you scroll down the list, you're going to get to what's called Beer and Bullstein. And you had Lyle on with BZ not too long ago, giving you a little bit about his history, and he will be joining us. If you go to SHR Media, you can read more about Lyle, read about his story, all the he served this country immensely. And now what he's doing in his life and what he's bringing to SHR Media. So go ahead and check that out. New show coming February 27th, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on the SHR Media Network. We're glad to have him. We're glad to host him, and we're glad that he's with us. And he's a hell of a guy. So if you haven't had a chance to check him out on X or see him on our shows, go watch BZ's show from last week, and you can see it on there. Moving on. Ice stories blow me away. And this one out of Minneapolis really blew me away. So you had an arrest of a serial immigration fraudster who was working as a Minnesota corrections officer. Okay, they hired him even though he was illegal. He was also a member of the National Guard that he was actually AWOL from, and masquerading as a U.S. citizen despite having no legal status in the United States. Well, that's weird. So if he was masquerading as a U.S. citizen, does that mean that he was voting illegally? Because I was told that never happens. That never happens, Sean. People don't steal other people's ID and then go and vote as them, even though they've been dead 5 years and in a freezer somewhere. That never happens. All those people that were paying benefits too long after they died, and that Kennedy's bill the president signed 2 weeks ago, that stuff never happens. You're crazy. But in this case, it did. Morris Brown, a 45-year-old illegal from Liberia, was arrested on the January 15th by Minneapolis by ICE for multiple violations of immigration law, including overstaying his student visa and making false claims to U.S. citizenship. So that happened while the surge was going on back in January in Minnesota. And it's so funny how stories like that don't get a lot of traction, but it really sums up everything that we're talking about with the SAVE Act. Oh, God, you're going to disenfranchise 80% of the country wants it. 75 to 80% of the country wants the SAVE Act. And as I've said before, when was the last time you got 75 to 80% of this country to agree on anything 6 months after 9/11? 9/11 for the next 6 months, we all agreed that terrorism was bad and we wanted to blow people up, and everybody agreed to that, including all the Democrats in Congress. Yes, the Iraq War. I understand that was all bullshit. I'm talking about Afghanistan and going after Al Qaeda and all that stuff. That was the last time we agreed as a nation, by and large, on a single issue. And to see that with the SAVE Act should send messages. Now, the left wants to tell you, as we've said before, women won't be able to vote. They're not smart enough to get passports. They're not smart enough to keep their marriage license. They're not smart enough to get their birth certificate. African Americans, Black people, Hispanic people, Asian people, none of them are smart enough to do that either. And you're going to disenfranchise 66 million voters, which is bullshit, and it will not. And it's not hard to get an ID, and it's just called adulting, as I've said before. And you know who agrees with me is Chuck Schumer.
Let's admit the truth. Everywhere people go, they're asked for a Social Security card. In fact, one way to prove you're a bona fide person who can have a job is to ask for a driver's license and a Social Security card. This is an anti-fraud amendment. Over where we go, people say, well, why can't you stop illegal immigrants or others from coming here. And the number one answer we give our constituents is when they come here, they can get jobs, get benefits against the law because of fraud.
What they are proposing in this so-called SAVE Act is like Jim Crow 2.0.
Let's admit the truth. Everywhere people go, they're asked for a Social Security card. In fact, one way to prove you're a bona fide person who can have a job is to ask for a driver's license and a Social Security card.
I like that second.
This is an anti-fraud amendment.
I wanted people to make sure they knew that it was Chuck Schumer saying that, and nobody else. Yeah, you know, it's so funny how, and we talk about good policies that have come out of this administration or have been proposed in this administration, being immediately met with orange man bad is the only reason that they oppose it. This is another one. Democrats, Hillary Clinton, Obama, all of them were arguing about making sure lowering immigration before they were for it and making sure we were secure in all of this in our elections and whatnot. And now all of a sudden it's controversial. And as I said before, and I got a compliment on YouTube comments, so I appreciate the gentleman that complimented me. These politicians, especially on the left and on the right too, but more so on the left, they are strippers. They are dancing on the pole, using whatever controversy and outrage they can to get their supporters to throw dollars on stage. They collect those dollars, they get down off stage, they go and con $100 lap dance out of them, telling them how they're wonderful and how they're beautiful, and they're always going to love that person. You come back to the strip club every single night and I'm going to take care of you. And then they leave with the bouncer and his 2015 Camaro that's all beat up because he is better than you are. And that's exactly how the Democrats run things. So the SAVE Act should not be controversial. This should not even be up for debate. It only is because it's something else to cause outrage and to cause people to be divided. And it's not working out for Democrats because just a month ago I was hearing, and again, it's super early in the year in the world of politics, everything can change in a minute. I get that. But a month ago they were all talking about how it's going to be a blue wave this next midterms and yada yada yada. And even CNN, who recently had to admit that most of the country wanted voter ID, had to come out and they had to play this also.
Electoral races nationwide should stand as a wake-up call for Democrats, because take a look here. The race raiders, governors post-2026 election, at least tilting to the Republicans. Look at this. A majority, 26. That is, at this point, the number of governors that are expected, at least tilting towards the Republican Party at this point. Democrats come in at just 20. The rest of the races are toss-up. Of course, you sum up to 50. And I will note that the Republicans right now hold a 26 to 24 gubernatorial seat advantage. So at this point, it doesn't look like Republicans on the net and the aggregate are actually going to lose any governorships. In fact, when you add in those toss-ups, they may gain. So this should stand as a major wake-up call to Democrats, because if there's a wave building, it has not, at least at this point, hit the state level when it comes to governorship.
Yeah, and again, the midterms are a light year away, and all of this can change in a minute. 100%, I agree. But it was just a month ago that Democrats were talking about a blue wave. And CNN isn't exactly a conservative-friendly media site, as much as progressives and politicians somehow try to argue that mainstream media has gone for conservatives and it always has been for conservatives, yada, yada, yada. No, CNN has to say this because they've been getting their ass kicked the last two elections for saying, 3 elections, I should say, for saying a lot of things were coming true that were not coming true and that their polling was garbage. So now they actually have to admit some truths in order to gain some sort of trust back. As we all know, mainstream media trust by the U.S. public is somewhere polling in the percentage of herpes. I don't know which one's more popular at last check, but they're pretty close to one another. So yeah, you're seeing Obama signal a change in policies. You're seeing Hillary Clinton talking about immigration, how it has to be tighter. And now you're seeing media starting to be more honest about what's going on out there. And that is the Trump effect. That is the 100% the Trump effect, because he spoke through the bullshit that other people haven't been able to. And whether you like Trump or you don't like Trump, you have to admit the fact that he was able to speak through the bullshit. He actually got to people in different ways than other presidents had. And he was able to figure out how to bait media into their insanity, how to use them to his advantage, because every single time they were shitting on him, he was able to turn it around on them. Like him or not, voted for him or not, you have to realize that when it comes to slapping the media around proverbially, he does a fantastic job at it. And now you're starting to see changes in the media as a result. I'm going to take a break. I'll be right back. We're going to finish up the show. I got a couple more things I got to talk about. Be right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Welcome to the SHR Media Shop. This is not just merch, it is a statement. SHR Media is built as a rebellion against the mainstream. We deliver truth without a filter or permission. When you wear our gear, you are standing for liberty and unapologetic free thought. Every piece is a badge of support for independent journalism. Wear it loud, wear it proud. Support the mission and join the rebellion at the SHR Media web store.
Attention, all patriotic women of faith. Yep, I'm talking to you, sis. Are you looking for high-quality, super soft apparel that reflects your love for country and your devotion to God? Look no further than Carry Girl Gear. Picture this. You rocking a tee so soft it's like being hugged by a cloud, all while showing off your love for God and country. Sounds dreamy, right? Well, welcome to reality, babes, because that's what we're all about here at Carry Girl Gear. We specialize in super soft tees, tanks, and more, designed specifically for the strong, patriotic woman who proudly wants to carry their message of faith and freedom. When you shop with us, you're not just getting a t-shirt. You're joining a community of like-minded women who are proud to wear their beliefs straight on their tees. So whether you're sipping sweet tea on the porch or leading the charge for faith and freedom, do it in a Carry Girl tee. Because life's too short for stiff, boring tees. CarryGirl.com, where faith and freedom meets fashion.
Come listen to BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon Radio Show. Live on select and exclusive Tuesday and Thursday nights at 11 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Rumble channel, SHR Media YouTube channel, X, Twitch, Spreaker, and wherever great conservative podcasts are found. BZ, your conservative Sherpa, guides you through the maelstrom of Democrat, leftist, and globalist lies, chaos, deceit, and betrayal. Raised as a free-range child with dirt, stains, mud, and freedom, BZ broadcasts from North Idaho, comfortably surrounded by actual normal people. Jump into our plush, sumptuous, palatial, and resplendent chat room on rumble.com. Click on live chat to join. Now, with 37% more umbrage and 19% more bulbosity than previous shows, featuring delicious Liberty additives for the best in late-night conservatarian talk radio. BZ reminds you that with great beard comes great responsibility. No chinchillas were harmed, embarrassed, fat-shamed, or the focus of any sarcasm whatsoever in the making of this ad.
Welcome back to the Edge of Liberty right here on the SHI Media Network. I don't read chat while I'm doing my show because, you know, I don't like to be any more distracted than I already am with all screens and all that stuff. But in breaks, I like to sneak in and see what's being said. And man, Samwise Gamgee, I hope the medication kicks in soon, buddy. I really do. So I was talking about polling before we went to the break. We were showing the CNN video. And there's another article that just came out that touches on that. And it is, if you're not paying attention, 2 Republicans are leading right now in California. And again, I know elections light years away. It's California. I don't trust anything. But you have Steve Hilton and Chad Bianco both leading the polling in California. And I think Newsom's 4th now, according to the last poll. But we talk about approval ratings, and there was somebody in here screaming a couple weeks ago about Trump's approval rating when it's at 45 in a lot of polls, and some polls have them lower, which is natural. But so I'm going to point out a poll where Newsom is polling lower than Trump in his own state. Newsom had an approval rating of 44% among 1,000 registered voters. In 2024, the governor's approval rating went down to 43%. The poll also asked on top issues facing California. 37% said the economy is their number one concern. That's up 3 points in December. By the way, remember, this guy's trying to run for president. Like that's his goal. And when you start losing bigger numbers in California, you know you're losing a lot. 19% cited housing authority as the top issue. Critics have argued that California's high cost of living, I know I live here, gas prices, insurance premiums, housing prices have all gotten worse since Newsom has been in office, and 53% of voters said they've considered leaving the state over affordability concerns. So when we're talking about CNN, you're talking about what the Democrats have done. Newsom is going to be, and I don't know how the midterms and the next election, Democrats are going to duck that, because Newsom is, by all accounts, everything progressive left Democrats want in a leader. He does everything that they want for the most part. And he's polling well behind Kamala, who is not polling well in general. But she's also been smart enough to stay out of the, I think she'd be polling a lot worse if she was out talking on a regular basis, but she's staying low. So it's going to be interesting to see how they square that off in the future. We talk about the progressive left outrage. I'll tell you, when you go to social media and you start seeing these videos, it does remind you that mental health is a serious issue in this country.
And I'm seeing innocent people being killed by ICE. What the fuck are you guys doing? I hope you see this video, because I'm going to tell America right here, right now, this ends when we stand up and we start shooting back. Get your guns, get your militia, get your people. And when ICE comes to town, don't give them a chance. Get a sniper and shoot. Blow their fucking faces off. Watch them fucking drown in their own goddamn blood. Because America will be great again when we realize that we're the ones who make the rules, people. If you don't like the motherfuckers that are in there.
Always have been, always will be, right? There's another one on TikTok, and I didn't have time to pull it up. I was going to. Her name's Meg. You can look it up. She's screaming in her car at the top of her lungs as she's driving, arguing that she doesn't want to see trials and Nuremberg trials for conservatives. She says them, but that's who she's talking about. If you follow her content, it's easy to suss that out. And she wants them dragged by the ankles into town squares and gutted from their groin to their chin. This is what happens when they start losing control and they start losing power. They start calling for violence and against specific people. Not a good look. Another story out of California that talked about these sort of issues in states. You saw Hochul had an issue like this, of course, Feinstein's driver and some others, where Chinese nationals and spies are getting really close to certain politicians, Fang and Swalwell, and taking advantage of it. This story is out of Arcadia, California. The campaign manager and fiance of Eileen Wang, a Democrat mayor in Acadia, was arrested and convicted of being a Chinese spy and is sentenced to federal prison. I wrote that article on shrmedia.com, and BZ, we've all talked about the threat that China presents and how they're constantly over here and they're constantly spying, and that needs to be dealt with. And here again is another issue for that. Finally, now I get 12 minutes left. Let's talk about the Randy Fine story. And then if I have time left, I'll get to the socialist experiment that's failing in New York. So the world was absolutely outraged. And by that, I mean politicians on the left and leftist lunatics, because Congressman Randy Fine put out a post on X, and I have it here. Hold on, just scrolling for it so I make sure I quote it exactly right. Yes, here it is. Where he said, if they force us to choose, the choice between dogs and Muslims is not a difficult one. And then he provided context. And here's the context. Nardine Kiswani, who's a Palestinian American who is Islamic, calling for the rise of Islam throughout the country. She's very close to Mandami and supported him throughout the election. Put finally, New York City is coming to Islam. Dogs definitely have a place in society, just not as indoor pets. Like we've said all along, they're unclean. hinting at the fact that somebody in New York City who's going to force a change and not allow dogs to live in the house. And Congressman Fine's post in response was, if they force us to choose, the choice between dogs and Muslims is not a difficult one. And people went crazy. Representative Monica McIver, who's under federal indictment right now, said, it is disgusting this level of Islamophobia supported by Republicans and condoned by the president. Randy Fine is a bigot, and this should not be tolerated. I won't stop standing with our Muslim neighbors. Okay, now here's a couple issues. Number one, the Quran never mentions anything about dogs, so I don't want to hear that this is a religious thing. It doesn't say that. This is a Middle Eastern thing. This is a political thing. This is a control thing. If they got to the point where they had enough control, they would make it so dogs were not permitted to live in your house. You, as a human being, would not be allowed to keep your dog in your house if you were in one of these controlled areas because they said so, not because you wanted to. That's the inference when you read through that post. Has nothing to do with religion. It's not in the Quran. Dogs aren't even mentioned in the Quran, except for once where they said something about them being good cave dwelling partners, believe it or not. Says nothing about them being unclean. No, that's the political side of Islam that we've talked about numerous times on the show. BZ's talked about, the whole network's talked about, where they're going to force things that aren't even part of their beliefs, but what they want upon you, and use religion as the shield to hide behind when you push back against it and say Islamophobia. Her saying Islam is coming to New York and that the dogs will not be allowed to live in the house, which, by the way, I would make the exact same choice Congressman Fine made. If those are my two options, that Islam rises and I don't get a dog or I fight back, then okay. That's not me drawing a line in the sand. That's you drawing a line in the sand, because you're going to change our entire culture in which animals are very much part of everybody's family, especially dogs. And I'm not giving up my dogs for anybody. So tough shit. But what's missed is the undertones. Dogs aren't mentioned in the Quran except in a positive way. So it's not a religious thing. It is a political thing. And they have no problem melding their two parties together and using one, or those two issues together, and using one to sponsor or lift up the other. While we're in New York City, because I don't think I need to say anything more than that. I think I was pretty direct about it. An interesting thing happened with Mayor Mondami. Now, he's doing well because these are the streets after the snow's been melting that's covered with feces in New York City.
Bro, this sidewalk
is lovely. It looks like San Francisco, if we're being honest. Very much looks like San Francisco.
Like, this is ridiculous.
So those are the streets of New York City right now because they didn't do snow removal properly, something they've been doing for years before that, but could not figure it out somehow under this administration. Now, Mondami's already had to walk back a couple of humongous political promises because he found out what we've known about socialism for a long time. Socialism's great till you run out of other people's money. Well, they're starting to run out of other people's money. The whole free bus thing is not happening. They're going to do it during one of the sports tournaments, and that's going to be it. The rental vouchers that he was promising everybody they were going to get so that essentially the government was going to be paying for the house, that's not happening anymore. He said that he was going to fundamentally reform the NYPD, and he's keeping the same commissioner there. He's going back on all of his promises. And the other one was not to raise taxes, and he was going to be able to do it with the money that they were making, and blah, 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 blah. And then there was a little fight between him and Hochul, where he asked Hochul to raise the income tax in the state, or the business tax, and she was like, no, we're not doing that. We're already bleeding. New York is like California. They're already bleeding a ton of business. COVID, they bled a shitload of business. They're not making as much money as they used to be. They can't go and afford to push out business. Even Kathy Hochul knows if you raise taxes, people leave. That's just the way it is. Well, Mondami wasn't having that. And he gave his little budget update this week, and it just hear what his plan is and how well this is going to work out for New York.
Would rather do is ensure that they remain as they are so that the city can be on firm financial footing. However, in order to get to this point of closing the gap on both this fiscal year and the next fiscal year, we are forced to raid the rainy day fund, the retiree health benefits trust reserve, and to increase property taxes across these other years.
So you heard that right. Raid the rainy day fund. So any money the city had saved, put away for, say, emergencies like, I don't know, 9/11 or some weird thing that might happen. But just emergency money that you keep around as a city, you have a tendency to keep that around. Going after the retirement fund, interesting, seeing how that would be all the city workers who'd paid into the retirement. Now you're going to start fucking with that. So you're going to start taking money that's really not yours anyways and using that to pay bills because you've almost overpromised and you don't understand how a budget works. And you had no frame of reference going in. You just won on vibing, man. Everyone just wants to vibe, so they're going to vote on Mondami. Vibe and communism, it just goes hand in hand. That's what got him elected. He was a buffoon. We said that when he was running. He had no idea what he was talking about. We said that while he was running. And all those promises he made, we knew, and I said, others have said that he was no way he was going to be able to accomplish that when he was running. Well, now he's showing he can't accomplishing that without robbing from other parts that he shouldn't be robbing from. The last one, raising New York City's income tax or property tax rather to 9.5%. That's the numbers that are being floated out of his office that media is reporting. And what's his name there from the Shark Tank who goes on CNN? Kevin O'Connor. I don't really pay attention to that too much, but the Shark Tank guy said, in about a year or so, I'm going to go to Florida and Mondami is going to be winning the real estate award because everybody's going to be leaving New York and going down to Florida and it will happen. If you raise it to 9.5%, you will see a mass exodus of people who are either retiring or about to retire or have retired because you're already fucking with their retirement and potentially taking money out of that. And that's a big risk for them. But you're also going to raise their property tax on fixed income retirees who own their property. They're going to get the hell out of Dodge. And you cannot blame them because they have themselves to worry about. And they're going to go to a state that treats them better, which would be Florida, namely on the East Coast. So yeah, communism and socialism is not working out so well in New York City because other people's money only goes so far. What do I have? I wrote the article on shrmedia.com talking about the outrage with the Epstein files versus the actual worries in the Epstein files and how we have to investigate the people that are actually in the Epstein files and not just people that were named because they were in emails. And everyone's, Trump was in there 38,000 times. Yep. I wrote the article. I broke it down. I showed you my work. He is not. His campaign emails are in there a shitload. And he was talked about poorly by people with Epstein. And that's why he was mentioned. And Epstein himself was shitting on Trump because he had him removed from Mar-a-Lago. But he's not in there actively participating as much as everybody. And I'm sure there's a couple of weirdos in the chat room right now who are trying to say he is. But then that mentality of everybody who's in the Epstein files because it's politically expedient for us and we're going to use that as a scream that everyone in there is guilty. I talked about this Monday night. Until it comes to bite us on the ass, and I introduce you to Whoopi Goldberg, who is also named in the Epstein files.
Now, in the name of transparency, can you put up my name is in the files? Okay,
so just based on the outrage that we see on social media, and she's condemned in the public, right? She should never work again. She should, just because she was named in the Epstein files, and clearly she doesn't have a valid excuse.
Yes. And what does it say? It says Whoopi needs a plane to get to Monaco. John Lennon's charity, it should say Julian Lennon's charity, is paying for it. They don't want to charter, so they're looking for private owners. Here's the info. And they give all the information, and they're saying, do you want to offer your G2? Okay.
And it looks like they said no thanks.
So they're reaching out to Epstein, her people, not Whoopi per se, but her people, but it doesn't matter. None of that context doesn't matter, right? That's been the argument that's been going on now for weeks, is context doesn't matter. We don't really want to know who's doing stuff. We just want to attack the people whose names we don't like in it. And obviously she went through and pretty much just said what I said on the other night, Monday night, of, well, not everybody in the Epstein file is guilty of something. Sometimes their names just get mentioned in it because of emails and publicity and all this other stuff. And yeah, that's entirely true. That's why I said, if you go to Gmail, I don't care if you believe me about how many times Trump is in there, go to the Gmail app where it's broken down like Gmail, where you can go through and search all of them. You do what I did. Use a couple different AIs and compare them next to each other. Ask questions that aren't bomb questions. You ask questions that are honest, investigative questions. How many times is Trump in the Epstein files? How many times is it from his campaign or an email blast that somebody in Epstein's circle signed up for? How many times is it talking about how Trump is affecting the market? Not necessarily what Trump's doing with Epstein, but how he's affecting the market because he's in a position of power he was running at the time as well. You suss that down and you'll actually start, and then you can do that for other people as well. And there are some people in there that do need to be looked at. I agree with 100%. There are people in there who 100% need to hang for what they did. But not everybody who's named in that is a problem, because a lot of it is that they were mentioned in passing, but their name still pops up in the files. Lastly, before we go, oh no, you know what? I'm not going to do this. I'll hold on to this. Folks, that's going to be it for me right here on the SHR Media Network. You're watching The Edge of Liberty. I'll be back Monday, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 on the East Coast, right here, same time, same place. But don't just look out for me. As I told you, February 27th, Beer and Bullstein is coming to SHR Media at 7 p.m. Eastern. As if that is not enough, you have the anchors, the folks that really get it done here on SHR Media. You have BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon Tuesday and Thursday nights, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 on the East Coast, right here on the SHR Media Network. Tuesday and Thursday mornings, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon on the East Coast. You have Mission Ready Men with Big E. And the guy who starts our week and ends our week, the Reaver of Common Sense, Jersey Joe, at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 on the East Coast, right here on the SHR Media Network. Thank you to KLRN Radio. Thank you to the mods for handling all business that they handle. Thank you to the subs. We're up to almost 100 or 1,050. So thank you very much for subscribing. Please check out shrmedia.com. You can find the shop under the shows tab. And if you use 10%, if you use the freedom code, if you use the code freedom, you'll get 10% off. Holy cow. I can't talk at all. That's how I know the night's over. I'll see you Monday, folks. Have a great rest of your night.